Hey, what's going on, everybody? It's your boy, Mr. OGDFS, and I'm here with another episode of the FanDuel NBA GPP DFS show. I go over all the greatest content that you can find for FanDuel and try to give you the best play to give you an advantage to take down the GPP tournament. Thank you for tuning in, whether you are watching this stream live or if you're watching this as a video replay. It's great information. And I'm going to go ahead and get into the slate. I did look into some totals for today. It appears with the Bucks and Pacers, Milwaukee's 10-point favorite against Indiana. Over and under, it's a 223. And then with the Oklahoma City Thunder against the Portland Trail Blazers, it's a 233 with Portland 3.5 favorite. So definitely it's just two games. However, in a slate like this, you want to try to get into the nitty gritty to try to find some value that you may not necessarily look for in a bigger slate. So we'll go ahead and dig right into it. At the point guard position, obviously up top, you got Russell Westbrook. Russell Westbrook did kind of rebound, got a 60 against Minnesota last time out. Russell Westbrook is a beast. And in a two-game slate, he's definitely someone to consider. When I look at it in terms of, because you're going to have to make a choice on, at least having a couple studs. You may have to, per se, let one go. So, I mean, at the point guard position, it looks like you may have enough value. I mean, when you look down, you got Damian Lillard, Eric Bledsoe, Darren Collison, Corey Joseph is down. I think Corey Joseph is probably about the lowest you can go at the point guard position in terms of value. Last game, I like Corey Joseph. They played the Bulls. It looked like a great matchup. If you look at his three previous games prior, he had got you a 26 against Dallas, a 41 against Minnesota, and got 22 against tough Orlando D. That you would have thought he would have performed well. He did underperform against Chicago, in my opinion. However, I do expect him to bounce back today against the Bucks in a tough matchup. But Indiana's going to need all the help they can get. With Collinson's going to need a lot of help running that point. So I expect that Corey Joseph should bounce back and get you about 5x at the point guard position. If When you look at Damian Lillard, his performance has definitely been under par. I mean, he's been getting the minutes. Two tough matchups in a row against Charlotte, Memphis, even Toronto and Boston. So he's been going up against tough competition. This should be a pace-up spot for Dame Lillard. And in the GPP tournament, you definitely have to consider that because that's a lot of upside. And if you got to make a choice between him and Russell Westbrook, look at the difference in the price. I mean, that's what, $2,400. So, I mean, and they're at home. So you got to consider that for Dame Lillard as well. I see Dame Lillard as being a solid option. Just depends on how the rest of the positions break down in terms of us finding any value. So that's what you want to look at there. Eric Bledsoe, 29 minutes, didn't need him for a full game against Phoenix last time out. The third and the fourth game back, I mean, he was really balling. But the last two obviously didn't play against Utah. And then with Phoenix, he's a question mark as well. But at home against Indy, even though point guard position is tough going up against Indy, but they're at home. So you definitely can see some upside from Bledsoe. But we moved to Darren Collison. I could definitely, even if it's on the road, I can still see Collison playing some good D. I think that between the two, I think Collison is the safer play because there is no Giannis on that team. Just literally, with Oladipo not being there, there is nobody to just dominate. And Sabonis being out, with the usage is going to be there, I believe, for Collison. So at the end of the day, even though it's a road game for them, traditionally, especially this year, guards have been struggling going up against the Pacers. So I definitely can see good things from Darren Collison getting a few peripherals out there on the court. We'll go ahead and move to the shooting guard position. Now, at shooting guard, up top, you got C.J. McCollum for $8,000. Last couple times out, He faced Charlotte, didn't perform well in 34 minutes. Against Memphis last time, he put up 27 points, but he really didn't get you any peripheral. So he only ended up with about 30, going between 34 and 35 fantasy points. CJ McCollum against OKC, because it's like a pace up spot, I could see good things happening. On the road, CJ, he put up a 47 against Toronto. Excuse me, at home for this game. So it appears that, if I had to choose between him and Lillard right now, based on the price and the potential for the upside, it appears that Dame Lillard may be a better option at the point. If you had to choose between taking the two, I probably would go with D Lillard. Plus, with his price point, I mean, they're only within what, like $1,100, or so. That's a good thing to look at in terms of making that decision. Then you got Chris Middleton coming up. Chris Middleton put up a 46 at Utah. In Phoenix, put up 22 points. Looks like his minutes decreased a little bit. They didn't really need him for that final run. So there's upside with Chris Middleton today at $7,500. If I had to looking at his game log, at least the past 4 games compared to CJ McCollum, I definitely would go with Chris Middleton over CJ McCollum with the $500 discount at $7,500. Dropping down, looking at Malcolm Brogdon. Brogdon, normally on a bigger slate, guys like him and Middleton, they're really like cash game plays to me, because they never really exceed value. You look at Brogdon. Brogdon gets you, about 30 fantasy points a game, between 30 and 35. His log was right about there. And Middleton, usually between about 30 and 40, which he did have a nice game at Utah, a few points over. So dropping down, though, Dennis Schroeder. Schroeder coming off 29 minutes against Minnesota and put up 24 fantasy points. With Paul George being back, his usage may not get you there to that 46 points that he had against a couple games back against Memphis. However, when you look at his price point for a GPP at just $5,800, he does leave you some room for upside depending on the pace of this game. So based on the limitedness of the guys up top being able to get you what I would consider, GPP numbers to win a tournament, I definitely like Schroeder. And then dropping down right below him, you got Wes Matthews. Wes Matthews at his price point, he's getting you right there at value, between 4 and 5x in his past 5 games. So, if you're looking for some value at the shooting guard position, definitely check out Wes Matthews. Pat Connaughton. Bad game last time against Phoenix, just 21 minutes, didn't put up any fantasy points. That's pretty embarrassing. So I would expect Connaughton, if he's going to get some playing time, to bounce back. However, I think for this game or for this slate, Terrence Ferguson always gets run, but as you see, he'll play 35 minutes and get you 10 or fantasy points, 7 fantasy points. He's really just a real strong defensive option that doesn't really have any DFS upside to him. So I would probably stop down about Wesley Matthews. I really wouldn't go beyond that for this slate. Moving to the small forward position. When you look at small forward, you got Giannis Antetokounmpo, 12-5. They're the best team basically in the East. Look at his past 4 games. Hasn't been hitting value except that one game against Utah. He had a monster game with almost 77 fantasy points. So Giannis, against Indy, I believe the last time they played Indy, he went off. He did. He got a 79, 33, 19, and 11, had a triple-double with the block and 2 steals. I don't see it being any different than that. I mean, if they were in Indy that day and the day they're in Milwaukee, I think if you're going to pay up for a big man, even though, his minutes are between about 30 and 33 minutes a game now, playoffs are coming around. I don't see him playing extreme run up to 40 minutes unless they really need him. So I would definitely like Giannis between all the other positions. At all the studs, he's probably one of the best ones because of his past success against the Pacers. Paul George going up against Portland. 38 minutes. He had a tough game last time out against Minnesota. Paul George, he's an MVP candidate. He going to bounce back. PG-13 is coming. He's coming to perform well. So I expect PG to put up numbers, and it's a $1,500 difference between him and Giannis. So with it being a more up tempo game with the higher total in that second game, I definitely would look at maybe saving the money on Giannis and drop it down to Paul George in a great bounce back spot against the Portland Trail Blazers. If you want to save some money here, if you look at Bogdanovich is getting a lot more run and a lot more usage. 34 minutes against the Bulls, 40 fantasy points. The last three games, he's between 35 and 50. At his price point, he looks like he's poised to get you 5X, slightly better. He's an excellent shooter going up against Milwaukee where, when you play against the Bucks, because they are down low, just swatting and blocking everything. So I would recommend, a good shooter, in the slate, and Bogdanovich at 7,700. He definitely should be able to get you value, not necessarily exceed it, but I definitely think he can hit value for you. Here's a guy who I think can exceed value for you tonight on this slate at the small forward position. If you want to take a chance, Maurice Harkless, looking great. 36 against Memphis, that's strong. 30 against Toronto, 37 against Boston. You talking about defensively some of the better teams in all the NBA. Stingy, giving up fantasy points. So for him to be putting up those numbers, and then now they're about to play OKC and they're at home, definitely like Harkless. Great deal at $6,000. He definitely can get you 6X. Mirotic hasn't really, in my opinion, other than that game against Sacramento, hasn't really had a huge game as of yet, but he performed well against Phoenix last time. With this game that, it could get out of hand, 10-point spread, Mirotic could get the run. So you could potentially take a lineup where you're doing Mirotic and Harkless at the small forward position. And I think that'd be solid. Nader is more kind of out of play now that George is back. In terms of a sleeper, I probably would drop down no further than Rodney Hood. Last time, 19 minutes against Memphis, didn't perform well. But prior to that, he did get a 37. In 24 minutes against Charlotte, he put up 27 points, which he was on fire, obviously, that night. So you want to keep him in mind. Layman, if he gets the run, he's solid. But based on the current rotation, it's kind of tough. On FanDuel, you can punt the lowest score. So you got guys like Hood for sure, or Layman that you can punt with at the small forward position. Moving on. Power forward position today on FanDuel. Sabonis still out. You got Thaddeus Young, $6,600. Haven't really raised the price to where you would have thought. So meaning that he can still hit you value and may slightly get beyond value tonight. They're definitely going to need his services. So Thad Young at 6,600, I can see him definitely hitting value. Don't see too much of any issues there with Sabonis out. The usage is high, so you can't ignore that. Also, Jeremy Grant, 33 minutes last time. Only 17 fantasy points going up against Minnesota. They definitely want to try to get him back fitted into the rotation properly. I believe a lot of success that they were having is because Grant was performing well along with Westbrook and George. Even Steven Adams even seemed like he was getting less, run in terms of his stats and production. So we want to see Jeremy Grant getting back up into the 30s. Just had that bad game. So I definitely think he can bounce back at 5,600. It's a chance. I probably would go with Thad Young over Grant for the extra, pay up the extra 1,000. But Jeremy Grant, $5,600, definitely an option in a 2-game slate. Now, I don't like going over every single player. If you look at my previous videos, I really don't. But because it's only a 2-game slate, you kind of got to go through every option. So I'm just doing some good analysis for you guys to, put it together the best way that you see fit and deem possible based on your roster construction and budget. And definitely wish you luck tonight on the slate. Amino, he come out for big games. This is a big game, so he should be guarding. You would think he would be guarding Paul George or even Grant, but with his defensive prowess, I could see him guarding George, meaning he would get a lot of runs. So at his price point, his fantasy stats haven't been high, but I could see him being between about a 4 and 5x player for you on this evening slate. Ilyasova, he been getting good run. If you want to punt right now, it appears that at his price point at $3,800, Ilyasova may be the best punt play of the night. He looked good. If he gets the run, he definitely should perform well against the Pacers. You see Morris hasn't really been doing too well lately, not worth considering. TJ Leaf, if he only could get the run, man. TJ Leaf, you see 3 and 4 games back, Minnesota and Dallas got almost a 25 and a 22 respectively. So, he's not getting even in 5 minutes, 10 fantasy points against the Bulls. I don't see it being that way really against Milwaukee, but if you can see foul trouble out of the guys up top, then you definitely want to give him a potential shout. I don't think Zach Collins, which he hasn't, or Myers Leonard have been getting a run, which they haven't. So with that being said, the farthest I drop down, probably Ilyasova, based on what's been happening lately at the center position. Yusef Nurkic, $8,600 going up against OKC. Steven Adams, tough matchup. But Nurkic, when he's on, he's balling. 60 points, 2 back against Charlotte. And now, almost 40 against Memphis. He's getting you around 30 minutes. 30 minutes of Nurkic is off the chain. So big, strong GPP possibility there. If you can find value in other spots, you may want to pick up for Nurkic tonight at $8,600. This is a guy I definitely like, Miles Turner. He put up a 45 last time. He bounced back big against the Bulls. I could see him having the agility and speed advantage over Brolo. So if he has that, then Miles Turner can cause some havoc and probably get you up to that 40, 45 mark again and hit value. So he's not too far behind Nurkic in my mind, but if you want to save some money, I think it's a safe option to drop down to Miles Turner at just $7,700. Now, Steven Adams, actually, the past 3 games, he's been playing a lot better. Put up a 40 against the Spurs, 44 against Memphis, 38 against Minnesota. Adams, it looks like the safe play right now because of his consistency, and with his price tag compared to the other 2 guys, you may have a chance to sneak through and have some real value out of Adams and put that income somewhere else in your budget to try to win the GPP. So he's definitely a solid option tonight. And then Brook Lopez, Brolo, against Phoenix, really didn't play that well. Did ball against Utah, Sacramento, and Chicago. So, if it's the every other game, 35, then a bad one. And then 48, and then a bad one. Well, he's due for a good game again. So you want to pay attention to that. Brolo, 6,200, super upside potential. Canner hasn't really been getting the run lately. Kylo Quinn has been getting some playing time, but his fantasy production hasn't been well, and he hasn't, and minutes wise, he's not in there that long. So if he can't be a high point per minute producer, he's not worth the punt at this point. Noel, tremendous upside, just not getting the minutes. So, and his Canner as well, 4,500. 2 out of his past 5, he's been around the 20 mark. If you can see them wanting to put their energy down low between, Nurkic and then coming in with Canner, he won't probably have to deal with Steven Adams on the back end. He may be able to muscle, Noel and have some good fantasy production. So he's probably about the lowest I would want to punt at this point. I believe, Gasol did play, didn't really have too much production. So I would drop down as far as probably Canner and really don't want to do that. So Brolo is probably the lowest I'll go. That is my breakdown for this slate today. And, for March 7, 2019, it's your boy, Mr. OG DFS. Make sure you like this video. Make sure you subscribe to the channel so you can stay up to date with all the FanDuel, DFS, GPP information for analysis. I'll do NBA. I like golf. I like NHL. I've actually finished second before in the GPP and in NHL. So I definitely would love to get input. I usually do analysis for GPP on when there's not a big game, not a lot of games on the slate. I usually do that for, I do good, it seems like, on hockey. And, NASCAR, my first time really getting into that. I enjoy NASCAR as well. A lot of the drivers is real strategic out there. And then got to pay attention to a few different things. So, thank you if you have tuned in live today. And if you haven't tuned in live and you're watching this recorded, please, once again, stay in tune with the channel. I'm definitely going to try to grow it. Thank you for your support, and good luck tonight on this NBA slate. Have a blessed evening. Peace.